Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President and CEO of AHCA NCAL, Mark Parkinson.
Wow, what a great crowd. You know, I was going to start out by making a speech about what a great job Michael Wiley and Ashley Blankenship have done, but I think their presentations today speak much bigger volumes than I could possibly put into words. So would you join me in congratulating and thanking them for a spectacular 2 years? Amazing. We're super glad you're here. We know how hard the jobs are that you have. I mean, it's really hard, but you know, way more important than that, we know how important the work is. So we want this to be a week where you can relax and have some fun and hopefully learn some things and get re-energized. I get a chance every year to come out and make this speech, and it's a great opportunity because I get a chance to talk to everybody at one time, but it's also incredibly scary because I get a chance to talk to everyone at the same time. I don't want to blow it. And this year, it's been particularly hard because there's so many different topics that I could have picked. I could have talked about PDPM. You know, for years, we've had a system that just basically paid us for therapy, and we've taken a lot of criticism for providing too much therapy. Thank goodness CMS now has recognized that we need to treat the whole patient, and we'll still give therapy, but we're going to get paid for restorative and nursing and all of that other stuff that's important. And my speech would have been to our critics. My speech would have been, don't judge us by minutes under an old system that we know is flawed. Judge us by our outcomes, because I know the work that you all are going to do and our outcomes are going to be great. But I'm not going to make that speech. I could have given a speech about unity. You know, we've had some success in DC, and I think it's largely because we've been able to pull people together and have one voice. But I'm a little bit worried, more than a little bit worried about some states where the Medicaid rate isn't where it needs to be, and I'm starting to see fissures in the membership, and I get that. It's hard to pay dues when you're not making money, and it's hard to stay united when things aren't going well. But it's more important to be united in those states than anywhere else, and so I could have given a speech about unity, but I'm not going to do that either. Instead, I'm going to give a speech about love. Love. Now, those of you that know me well know it's incredibly ironic that I would give a speech about love. I am Mr. Data-driven, Mr. Metrics. I'm constantly telling our team, we don't aspire to adjectives. We aspire to numbers and specific policy results. But it turns out that there are things that are more important than numbers and specific policy results, and obviously at the top of the list is love. And my story starts with the Quality Initiative. 9 years ago, when GIF came, I think he has transformed our association. And we told you that if we went to CMS and we created the Quality Initiative and we picked 3 or 4 quality measures and pulled the whole sector together and worked on those things, that 2 things would happen. First, that we would improve quality across the country, not just in individual buildings, but across the country we would improve quality. And the second thing that we told you was that when we did that, the constant criticism that we receive all of the time would go away. It would at least get cut down. People would see the great improvements that we were making, and we quit taking so much criticism. Well, we were half right, just half. You did your part. What you did is unbelievable. By any objective standard, quality has improved in assisted living buildings and SNFs all over the country. Our residents are experiencing less pain. Thousands more are returning to the community. Tens of thousands are not going back to hospitals, and hundreds of thousands have been taken off antipsychotic medication. What has been accomplished is truly remarkable. Unfortunately, we were wrong about the second thing. Turns out that people don't care about data. Policymakers aren't interested in statistics. Instead, we have been subjected to more criticism, more congressional hearings, more OIG reports than ever before. In fact, there is data that shows that people care more about individual stories than they do about data. And so the typical situation is that there will be a horrific case of care in an assisted living building or a SNF somewhere in the country, usually a non-member, usually indefensible, that makes the newspapers, makes CNN, ends up on TV, ends up being the subject of a congressional hearing, and it completely washes out the hundreds of thousands of residents that we have successfully taken care of. It completely washes out our data. So what do? Well, as you've heard all morning, we need to start telling our stories. We need to start telling about why we care. So I'm going to start that out by telling you why I care. I think most of you know that when Stacy and I were in our early 30s, we quit practicing law. I didn't run again for the state senate. I thought that I had permanently retired from politics. People thought we were crazy. Why would you quit practicing law? Mark, if you stay in the state senate, you might be governor someday. I heard that. Well, we quit because we had this, like you, this passion, this desire to build a building and take care of residents. Because our kids were 7, 4, and 1 when we opened up our first building, for all practical purposes, they grew up in our buildings. We had them there almost every day after school. They were there on weekends. Every major holiday, we were all there. And they weren't just there in our buildings. As they got older, they actually worked in them. At first, I thought it was very cool to work in the buildings. As I got older, sometimes not so much. And this is a picture of them on a day where they weren't very happy with me. This is our 4th building, and we'd had a fountain that we'd installed in front of it, and we needed to move those rocks that you see. They totaled up to 2 tons of rocks. They had been delivered about 100 feet from the fountain. We had to take them over in wheelbarrows. They're great workers. We got it done. It was a hot day, and at the very end of the day, somebody from the local newspaper happened to be driving by, and they thought this was cool, and they wanted to take our picture to put in the newspaper. Well, we were actually done with the job, and the kids were already pretty upset with me. The last thing they wanted to do was pose for a photo, but we talked them into it, and the one that's on the left, right next to me, Sam, he ended up he's an opera singer now, so he's a ham, so he's smiling, he's willing to pose, but Kit and Alex were not happy at all. And so the next day, there's Kit, just close up. So that picture appears on the front page of the newspaper the next day. There were other days that they were happier. Here's Sam and Alex in front of a statue in front of our 2nd building, and here's all of us where we dedicated a statue. Kit's still not cooperating. She was younger then. And then this is Alex, and Alex is about 10 in that photo, and I want you to think about that photo for a minute, because this story is about Alex when he was about that age. It was a Sunday. We were working that morning in our first building. Alex was in the dining room helping with breakfast, and he was 10, and there's a lot of things that 10-year-olds can do in the dining room to help. I was down the hall helping get a resident down to the breakfast when I heard the words that you just don't want to hear. I heard, "Mrs. Fahnestock has been hurt. Mrs. Fahnestock has been hurt." Mrs. Fahnestock was a wonderful woman. She was in her 80s, completely mentally alert, fantastic attitude. She was not willing to admit that she was as infirmed as she was. She needed to be in a wheelchair, but she used a walker. And so she fell a lot. So when I heard that she had been hurt, I'd seen her headed down to the dining room, and I was worried that she had fallen. And as you know, that can be very, very bad. So I'm thinking I'm going to see her on the floor in the dining room. There's going to be this chaotic scene. I get to the dining room, and much to my relief, I don't see that scene at all. Instead, she's sitting in her regular chair. One of our nurses is there, and then standing right next to her, straight as an arrow, is Alex. And so my fear turned to relief. I walked up next to them, and I learned that what had happened is that as she had transferred from her walker to her chair, she tore her skin on the walker. As you know, many of our residents suffer skin tears. They bleed when they occur, but it's not really an alarming situation. I could see that Alex had taken her napkin and put some water on it and was compressing her wound. And all of a sudden, you know, that fear that I had that had turned to relief, I was kind of proud that Alex was doing this. I was starting to feel pride. And I said to Mrs. Fonestock, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm okay. Your boy is taking care of me." I said, "Are you sure?" She said, "Yeah, your boy is taking care of me." And then Alex turned to her and he said the words that are really the reason I'm telling you this story. He said, "Don't you worry, Mrs. Fonestock. Everything is going to be okay. We love you." Now, he just said it once, but let me repeat it. He said, "Don't you worry, Mrs. Fonestock. Everything is going to be okay. We love you." At that point, I had been fearful and then relieved and then a little bit proud. My pride level went to 1,000. And I didn't think it then, but I've often thought it since then. If all the people who thought it was crazy that we'd given up our law practice and political career to take care of older people had been there in that moment, I'm not sure they would have thought it was so crazy. Now, I tell you that story not to brag about Alex. I tell you that story because it is not unique. There are hundreds of thousands of stories like that taking place in our buildings. This week, today, this morning, right now, as we are here in this room, there are aides waking up tens of thousands of our residents on the resident schedule, not some predetermined schedule set by the state, because they're so committed to person-centered care. We have aides that are picking out just the right outfit for a resident that might be celebrating a birthday or having special visitors today. Tens of thousands of hugs have already occurred today in our buildings. And a similar number of people have been told that they are loved just today, at this moment, even though the only people they have left in their lives to love them might be us. And in hundreds of buildings, maybe thousands, this week, we will have residents who it's time for them to die. We and hospice will make sure that they are lying in peace, in no pain, and surrounded by friends and loved ones, even if we are the only friends and loved ones that they have left. These hundreds of thousands of acts of kindness are never going to be in a newspaper. There's not going to be a OIG report on random acts of kindness in America's nursing homes. There's never going to be a congressional hearing about the hundreds of thousands of great things that are happening in ALs today. But they are real, and they matter. Now, if you're wondering what happened to Mrs. Fonestock, I'm happy to report that she was not seriously injured, and of course she recovered from her skin tear. And she went on to live 2 or 3 more years in our buildings, and we had a great experience, and she and her family had a great experience, and it was phenomenal. And if you're wondering if it's very smart to raise your kids in nursing homes and ALs, it's turned out pretty well for us. Alex is now 30. He ended up going to Ivy League schools. He met a wonderful woman in undergraduate school. They both went to law school. They both practiced law at fancy law firms in DC. They won all sorts of awards. But most important, 6 months ago, they gave birth to their first son and our first grandson, Mark Albus Parkinson. And from my friends from the Midwest, if you're worried that, okay, I've been out in DC for 9 years now, has Mark lost his roots? I want you to know that I haven't. And so this is a picture of 6 weeks ago, the opening day of the NFL season. Myself, Alex, and Mark. You know, if I'm fortunate enough to have the kind of death that we try to create for our residents, where I still have some of my mental faculties and I'm lying in a bed and I'm pain-free and I'm surrounded by friends and loved ones, and I have a chance to scroll through the movie of my life, there's going to be a lot of ups and a lot of downs, but mainly ups. When I get to the part where I focused on Alex, I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to see the 30-year-old Alex or whatever age he happens to be at that time. And I don't think I'm going to hear some fancy speech that I've heard him make in the past and speeches I hope to hear him give in the future. I think I'm going to see that 10-year-old Alex, and I think the words that I'm going to hear are, "Don't you worry, Mrs. Fonestock. Everything is going to be okay. We love you." That and the hundreds of thousands of acts of kindness that will occur in our buildings this week, today, this morning, right now, that's why I care. And it's why we will never stop fighting for you in Washington, D.C. Thank you all very much.